Guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Chris on. Today we're going to be talking about what I think is one of the biggest killers whenever it comes to success. It's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially myself. You know, from a young age to an older age, everybody normally goes through bouts with it, from any task to giant successes, and it's basically procrastination. How to overcome it, what causes it, how it's created, and what you can do to make sure that it doesn't control you, and instead you start controlling it. So, you know, my personal thing when it came to procrastination is that I always since I was a younger kid, picked up things very quickly. So I always never thought or got used to basically putting a lot of time towards solving tasks. And that was like my biggest problem, because growing up I thought it made a lot of sense. It meant that I was going to pick up everything so easily, like whether it was assessment or whether exams. But the truth is that I was developing such terrible habits with myself. See, my older sister, she actually was really good at, she didn't pick up things quickly, but she was really good at dedicating a lot of time and just sticking to a certain task for extended amounts of time. Like I'm talking 8 hours to 20 hours, just constantly sitting at a desk working on assessment, or whether it was a job, marketing, or whatever. And I always used to think that, wow, that was like, oh, look at her, she's so useless, she can't do it like as fast as me. But what I started to realize was that no matter what, no matter how good you get at picking up things, whether it's natural talent or anything like that, eventually it's going to come to a point where you're going to have to put in the hard work, the hard, long, extended hours, and focus on whatever it is. Because no matter how good you are at something, eventually you just have to put in the time. That's how it works, whether it's sport, whether it's business. No matter how quickly you pick up the basics, the fundamentals, once you've worked out the fundamentals, when it comes to developing long, extended, professional aspects of whatever the skill that you're learning, it just takes extended periods of effort, extended periods of hours. You just have to put in the hours. And so I really struggled with that, and that's where procrastination ended up really destroying me. I was constantly putting things off because I didn't really like the idea of doing it. It had a level of stress, whether it was with my job. If I couldn't get things done within an hour or two, you didn't really find me putting in anything past that. And it was really tough because it genuinely affected my potential success. And so I realized that it was something that I had to overcome and something that I needed to learn to understand. And that's basically what made me realize how procrastination starts. So procrastination starts from stress. That is why it happens. There's a certain task or a certain activity that you need to do, and it's normally a level of productiveness, whether it's busy work or whether it's really productive work. There's this level of stress behind it. Now, either it's a lot or it's little, but we as people, we don't like stress. Generally, people, they try to avoid it as much as possible. I know I did, I know a lot of people I did. I reckon about 80% of people naturally inclined towards avoiding stresses. It's really why we make a lot of our decisions. So basically, you put it off. You want to distract your mind by the potential success, because that causes stresses in itself. So you do something else, whether it's entertainment, any level of distraction that keeps you away from focusing on it. Now, depending on the task, let's say most tasks have a deadline on it to a certain extent, all of a sudden now you have less time to do this stressful task, so that creates more stress. Even something as simple as mowing the lawn, let's say you have the entire weekend to do it, by putting it off, you can't necessarily do it at night because your neighbours will get mad at you. So all of a sudden there's more stress accumulated because you didn't want to do it in the morning, so now you have less time to do it in the afternoon. And if you don't want to do it on Saturday afternoon, then so when you put it on to Sunday, and you don't want to do that, and all of a sudden you're rushed to do it by the end of Sunday afternoon to make sure that you don't offend any of your neighbours by doing it in LA. That's more of a common example. But a more specific example might be assessment, whether you're at university or at school. I know me, I struggled with this. Let's say there was an assessment, you had 10 weeks to do it, so you put it off because it's like, why would I want to stress myself out in week 1? Week 2 go passes and it's the same sort of cycle, and all of a sudden you're crammed studying at the end of week 10 because you put it off for the other 9 weeks. And that's exactly what I was going through. That's what I was going through with life. I just consistently was putting off this stress because I didn't like it, and it added towards more. And that's the vicious cycle of procrastination. Because whenever you procrastinate a task, it doesn't feel good when you eventually have to do it. In fact, it genuinely feels worse because there's more urgency, which creates more stress, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. And so there's this terrible cycle that affects people in such a terrible way. And it's almost instilled in everyone. It's because psychologically, we really just want to avoid stress as much as possible. So how is it that you basically understand this? Well, I basically started to realize that you have to look towards recognizing that it's first the problem. So you're understanding that, yes, there is tasks that I need to do, and there are tasks that I shouldn't do, and basically understanding and diversifying each one. So, and then I started applying the principle, first things first, and second things if you have time. So first things first, second things every time. So first, in order to understand that, you need to understand what is the first things that you need to have to do. So categorizing them. Categorizing these traits, putting them into certain categories and stuff like that. Now, it's really tough because you end up starting to realize these problems. For example, I worked out that there's things that are important and then there's things that are urgent. And the things that are important are definitely far more important, but they're not basically coupled with a deadline. And the deadline are things that cause more stress. So, for example, what's something that's really urgent? Making sure that you get the report in for your daily report at work. Making sure that you report to your boss the numbers that you have for that day, the things that you got accomplished, and what the schedule is for tomorrow. That's really urgent because you have to get that done by a certain time. I'm guessing, depending on where you work, probably 5 o'clock. Okay, that's super urgent. All right, now what's more important is your health, making sure that you exercise, making sure that you eat right and stuff like that. But the thing about health is that there's no actually specific deadline. It's either something that you consistently put effort towards, or it's going to bite you in the back in the future. So it's understanding the difference between urgent and important. And the thing is that people always value the urgent. So you have to basically put your own deadlines on the certain important things to make sure that you attribute the same amount of prioritization. First things first type of thing. Now, second things basically is anything that's not falls into those two categories. So unproductive work, distractions, entertainment. If you can prioritize, or categorize anything that's either being more productive to your goal, more productive to your work life, or not, then that's when you can start to understand and decipher, okay, is this one of those things that I'm going to put first or second? Plus, there's a huge relief. I know that if you've ever had an assignment at school that was meant to be done by week 10, and if you get a draft done by week 2, you're laughing for the rest of the semester because you have literally far less stress than every other student in that room. And so it always feels so much more rewarding when you do it at the start versus right before the deadline. And yeah, we as people, we struggle to do that. And the reason why that is because it's all about habits. Habits is what make or break a person. In fact, habits is so imperative towards success. So it's making sure that you develop these types of habits, because I can give you all these tips, I can always give you these processes to make sure that you overcome them, but you need to start to implementing your own habits and disciplines to make sure that you never run into this situation. For example, if you are one of those people that in school I thought were crazy, I thought were complete nerds who could do an assessment 2 weeks into its given date. So like, they literally do it 8 weeks before the given date. I thought you literally have nothing else to do with your time. But the truth is that those people are they're more destined for success because they have their habits set. They have their priorities right. Success is a constant journey of making the correct decisions. That's really what it is. And all you have to do is make more right decisions than wrong ones. And part of that is instilling a habit. So let's talk about how to develop a habit and how a habit is formed. So a habit forms through cue, routine, reward. It's really that simple. And you can apply that logic to just about anything that you do. For example, if you wake up and you start off with drinking a glass of water. So the cue is that when you wake up, your mouth is dry. Your routine is that you drink a glass of water, and your reward is that you feel less famished or less dry mouth and stuff like that. You feel a little bit more comfortable. All of a sudden, a routine starts to develop because every single morning you have that. Now, it doesn't matter whether your mouth is dry or not, you're having a glass of water every single morning because a habit's been instilled. Now, you can literally attribute that to just about anything in life, especially the bad habits. So let's relate it to procrastination. Stress basically is the cue for you to do the routine of distraction, which is distracting you from the stress or the task that you need to do. And the reward is that you literally feel a little bit less stressful. Now, that catches up, and eventually you have to do the task. And so once you can recognize that your literal cue is that stress, you need to utilize common sense and realize that feeling that you're experiencing, you need to utilize that energy into making sure the task is getting done, or at least getting started on this productive task. Because if there's a bunch of things that you need to get done in the day, then obviously it's just between switching the two. So I talk about someone who struggles from ADD or ADHD, is that the way that I overcome that with these distractions was basically distracting myself from one productive task with another productive task. So for example, if there's a bunch of things that I need to do in a certain day at a desk, meaning that I have to do all of these things at a desk, so it's not relative to driving a certain place or my environment, I literally just bicycle switch between these tasks. So for example, let's say developing strips for my team. I'd literally work on that, and the second I notice myself dropping or developing a level of distraction, I switch to the next one, which might be calling my team members to make sure that they're doing the right things for that day. And as long as I switch between these two tasks, it's almost as a feeling of distraction, but in reality, I'm distracting myself from a productive task with a productive task. It's almost as if you're combating a bad habit with a bad habit. You're combating a good habit with a good habit. And if you have that type of mindset towards a lot of things, then you have to just basically recognize that you in itself are developing a habit of good habits. And it's crazy, and it's tough, and it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. Especially your first, I'm going to say 2 months of applying this is not going to be easy. It's going to be a constant thinking, because the idea of a habit is that the brain creates these habits because it's less automated thinking. It's more automated thinking. The brain is smart. It doesn't like to waste energy where it doesn't. That's why it creates these loopholes and these constant things where it's like, we don't have to think about how to breathe, we don't have to think about how to walk. It's because the brain creates habits so that it's automated tasks that it doesn't need to put energy towards it. And that's the same way with a habit. So I understand that your first month or 2 months is going to be difficult, but once it's situated and you've developed it, it's like situated and it's developed, then your mind no longer, you don't have to think about it. It's already set up. It's not stuff that you have to put constant effort towards. So it's in your mind's best interest to develop these things. And that's what you want to look towards creating. And the way to create that is through a consistent effort of constant thought. It's going to take just constant back-to-back thought. It's not easy to develop, but once you have it set, you no longer need to think about it at all. And it's about getting to that stage, and it's whether it's something as simple as breathing, something as simple as walking, or something as simple as being productive. Productivity is a habit just as unproductivity is a habit. So you want to look towards basically developing that. And I'm telling you right now, it's not easy. And if you look towards developing your willpower and your discipline, specifically your motivation and making sure that you have a discipline towards yourself, once you've set that up, then it's just going to be a matter of time before you start becoming a more productive person. So you want to look towards developing that in order to develop all the benefits that come behind it. And the way that I do that is essentially doing that 2 task things, but also utilizing something called the 5-4-3-2-1 rule. So the 5-4-3-2-1 rule is literally as simple as it sounds. It's about counting backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you literally do the thing that you have to do. See, when it comes to fear or stress, it also comes from anticipation. So anticipation is really thinking something's going to happen. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not. Either way, it's developed a level of fear or stress behind it. So the Navy SEALs talk about how before they're about to essentially finish their graduation, they get people to climb up a diving board and they have to jump in the water. Now, the Navy SEALs, believe it or not, when it comes to the fear, as you're climbing up the ladder, all that fear is building there. All of it's coming on the climb up. Now, once you're at the top, the anticipation plateaus. You've reached the top amount. It's not going to increase, it's not going to decrease. In fact, it's going to stay the same. And you're left with the decision whether it's to jump or whether it's not. Now, the thing about these diving instructors is that they actually kick them off if they have any sense of hesitation. So now they don't have a choice, they just have to left with the action. And the truth is that action is the only thing that cures fear. Action is the only thing that cures stress. Action is the only thing that helps you come over these adversities or these issues that you might have. So what you need to do is utilize the 5-second rule to make sure that that doesn't happen. And what I do is, basically, whenever I feel myself having that thought of, I should be doing this productive thing, I should not be doing this distraction, I need to do this thing, focus on that. The second I have that thought, it takes a level of common sense. I count that backwards from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I just go. I just make sure that I go, I make sure that I do it. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's a little bit too easy. The truth is it is. In fact, it's so simple that it becomes easy not to do as well. So it's important, just like any other habit, that once you start utilizing this, you follow through with it. But there's also a little bit of a psychology behind the 5-4-3-2-1 rule. So the first part of it is that 5-4-3-2-1 is the universal countdown for something needs to happen. If you count backwards from 5-4-3-2-1, your mind is programmed through social programming, the TV that you watch, that every single time there's a countdown, something's meant to occur, something's meant to happen after it. So it's almost as if it gives you that little bit of a push to make sure that you do something. That's so many times where if you've ever come towards a cliff and you've been hesitating and you've had friends around you, or just strangers even, and they go, 3, 2, 1, go! And they keep counting down, they keep going down, because it's almost as if your mind clicks and realizes it needs to start doing something. So you can utilize that to your advantage. In fact, there's a lot of celebrities who utilize that rule as well. That one being Steve-O. Steve-O is an individual who does high-risk stunts. And basically, whenever he's doing a high-risk stunt that's relative to a level of urgency, meaning that if he doesn't execute at the right time, there's danger involved for either himself or other people around him, he utilizes the 5-4-3-2-1 rule. In fact, he said, and he's on record saying, he's never bailed out of a 5-4-3-2-1. So the second he starts counting down from 5, he always follows through. And what that basically you could take away from is that you want to have integrity from yourself, because basically if you set it up correctly, the second you start counting down from 5, it's almost as if the task is already done. In fact, the anticipation isn't necessarily jumping off that cliff or starting that business or starting to do that stressful task. It's more so that just start counting backwards from 5, because if you do it correctly and you've instilled that habit within yourself, the second you start countdowning, the task is good as done. And the thing about stress and the thing about fear, the only thing that actually cures it is action. Action is the only thing that cures fear. So if you can start to understand that no matter what, this stress, this fear is always going to be there. At some point, you're going to have to face it. You're either going to pay the pain of regret or the pain of discipline, because that's what happens. You're either going to get reprimanded by yourself or your boss, or you're going to basically feel the pain of discipline where you have to do the thing that you didn't want to do. And if there's anything that's consistent in my life, it's that I've realized is that no task, no matter how much fear, no matter how anticipation, no matter how much stress is behind it, nothing is ever as bad as I thought it was. Whether it's jumping off of that bridge, whether it's jumping off of that cliff, whether it's doing that productive task when I shouldn't have, nothing is ever as mundane. In fact, the second I notice that I'm starting to do this productive task, I just sort of fall into it. And my mind, my thoughts start moving into how to solve this problem, how to sort this out. And that's the case with a lot of people. A lot of mundane tasks aren't actually that mundane. It's just comparatively, they're not as fun. And so if you can sort of wrap your head around how your mind works, how you can make sure that you put certain things in certain aspects and set up certain routines to make sure that you aren't in these situations where you are procrastinating, and the easiest way to do that outside of these processes and tasks is through anchoring your environment. So if you're a person who's easily distracted, get rid of your distractions. If you're trying to start a business, hang around people that are trying to start their business with you or working on your own. You don't want to be surrounding yourself with distractions, whether if you struggle with social media, I know that a lot of people do, delete the apps, get rid of the phone, delete the accounts. Don't let it tempt you. If you were addicted to alcohol, the first step towards that is to get away from alcohol. And that's the same thing. It's realizing your addictions, realizing your bad habits. Because there are good habits and there are bad habits. And when it comes to overcoming these bad habits, I can't stress this enough. You don't want to distract yourself with another bad habit, because all that ends up happening is that you develop two. If you're a person who's a drinker and you're like, oh, okay, well now I'm trying to try to overcome drinking by smoking. What happens is you don't actually ever get rid of a habit, and that's good and bad. The facts is that you never leave them, you just distract yourself. There are other habits that take the place. That's why relapses happen. That's why you have people who haven't drank alcohol for 20 years who fall back into that rut, because the habit may not be as automated, but it's still existent. And that's why you need to make sure that you develop discipline as well, because when you start to replace these habits, it's very easy to relapse. It's very easy to sleep in when you're trying to develop the habit of waking up early. It's very easy to learn to be unproductive when you're trying to be productive. It's very easy to fall into the trap of social media when you're trying to step away from it. So that's when discipline needs to definitely start taking over. Discipline needs to be instilled in you, and it's really not that hard. It just involves constant, small amounts of effort. The days where you feel like not doing it, the days where you feel like not going, those are the days that you need to go the most. Because it's the thing about motivation whenever it comes to developing these things is that it comes and goes. It's great when it's there, and you shouldn't rely on it when it's not, because the truth is the mood of the decision when you make it always disappears very quickly. And it starts to come back when success is happening, but on the come up, when it's full of bad, just annoying and mundaneness, motivation doesn't come through those days. And if it does, it's a blessing, but it's not something you should rely on. But it's certainly there when success is attained. When you have the fruits of your labor, all of a sudden you feel a lot of motivation. But where was that when you were on the come up? The truth is you need to develop discipline, especially when it comes to instilling these habits, whether it comes to success, whether it comes to overcoming procrastination. It's not going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be incredibly tough. But what you need to do is stay focused, stay on task, understand that you're not going to feel good when you're doing this for the majority of the days. If you're looking towards setting this up, they reckon it's about 66 days before a habit is formed, meaning that it's a part of you now. And the fact is that I'd argue probably about 50 of those days are going to be filled with a lack of motivation. They're going to be filled with either you're not thinking about it or you're thinking about why you shouldn't be doing it. And the truth is, what needs to happen is that you've got to overcome that with discipline. Have integrity yourself. You've set out to follow through with this task, so follow through with the task. And it's tough, it's not easy, but if you can put in the time, the effort, like the suffering of the pain, the suffering of the discipline, that's when you develop all these levels of success traits. If you look at any individual who's become successful, they have an insane habit. They have an insane work schedule. No matter how much you think that it was just naturally given to them, the truth is something as simple as J-Lo, like Jennifer Lopez, a lot of people think that she's just naturally talented. When if you actually look at her work schedule, it's set out by 15-minute blocks. She's so time conscious of where her time is going by default, she actually doesn't have a choice anymore. And that's the same with so many different success-oriented people, where you can look at it, the ones that are documented, where they're musicians. Every successful person has a successful work habit. In fact, the more successful work habits that you develop, the more chances that you're going to become successful. So if you feel as if you're falling behind, if you feel as if you don't have them, if you feel as if you're not time conscious, you're putting your time into things that you shouldn't be, the great thing is that you've recognized that, and that's awesome. But now it's about applying solutions to the problems that you have. Because that is the truthful only way in order to instill a level of success in you. You have to basically first recognize that you have a problem. It's really interesting because bad habits are just bad addictions. And the same way that you overcome if you were an alcoholic is the same way that you overcome any other addiction or bad habit in itself. It comes with self-reflection. So recognizing that you have a problem and understanding that you can't solve it by yourself. You need to look towards out sources, not necessarily other people, but definitely other sources in order to overcome it. Because if you could overcome it by yourself, you would have already done it. So you need to understand self-reflection, self-evaluate. Okay, is this a problem? Now, now a lot of people go, how does it determine a problem? Well, the way that I determine that it's a problem is, what's your goal? What are you looking towards achieve on the short term, medium term, and long term goals? Is this addiction detrimental towards that? For example, if your goal is to have a healthy family and you're an alcoholic, that's obviously most likely detrimental. If your goal is to start a business and you're an alcoholic, that obviously means that it's probably going to be detrimental, especially if you can't function during work hours. And that's really how I base bad addictions on. Are they affecting your work life? Are they taking away from time spent in your business, or are they affecting literally how productive you can be? Or are you non-functional when you're doing these certain things, whether it is something as simple as sleeping in, whether it is something as bad as a bad drinking habit, or whether it is something that's as common as a social media addiction. First recognizing, is this getting me closer to my goal, or is it taking away from it? Because the facts are is that we have 24 hours in a day. Every single person has 24 hours a day. Now, the thing about this 24 hours is that if you view it as a commodity, it's a different type of commodity because no matter what, it's being spent. And that's what's interesting. Your time, if you view it as a monetary thing, it's one of those weird things that's always being spent. For example, money, you can get money out of the bank and you can put it on the table and it's not going to be spent. It might fluctuate in value, but it is not going to be spent. It's sitting on that desk and it's not going to go anywhere. The thing about your time is that you can't just put your time on the shelf. Your time is being spent every single day. It's being invested every single day. So you have to stop and think, okay, well, where's my time going? Where is my most valuable commodity going? Right? Where's my hours, limited hours that I have per day going? Is it going into too much sleep? Is it going towards my business? Is it going towards hanging out with the wrong people? And the thing about investments is that no matter what, you're going to get a return on your investment. You're either going to like the return or you're not going to like it. Just like money, you can put $1 million into anything and you're going to get a return on that. It's either less than what you put in or more than what you put in. And that's the same thing with time. If you literally viewed your time, if you were CEO out of an out-of-conscious body and you looked at yourself, would you be happy with the productivity that you're developing with your time? Are you actually investing in things that are going to actually provide fruitful results? I think that if you're investing a lot of your time to social media and you're not running a business through social media, then that's unproductive. And it's tough, it's not easy. The truth is that the road towards success is very lonely, it's very tough, it's not easy, it's not filled with fun. But by the end of it, at the end of those 3 to 5 years, at the end of those 10 to 15 years of investing into yourself, investing into your business, the later end of it is far more fruitful than you could have ever experienced dabbling in entertainment, dabbling in unproductivity, dabbling in fun. Because I have a saying, it's called all in, all out, 100% either way. If you want to basically look towards having fun, do it 100%. If you want to look towards being productive, do it 100%. You will always get more results. If you want to be committed to a relationship, do it 100%. If you dabble in a relationship, you're going to get dabbling results. You're not going to get a fruitful relationship out of it. You're probably going to break up. That's the honest truth. If you don't view a relationship as one of your number one priorities in life, it's going to fall through. So you have to ask yourself, what are you wasting your time on? What are you putting your investments into? If you dabble in anything, you're going to get dabbling results. I think that if you dabble in instruments, you're just going to get decent at it. If you put in the hours of a master class, going literally 10,000 hours as quick as you possibly can, you're going to get the results of becoming a professional in that field. That can be anything from whether it's construction, whether it's learning an instrument, whether it's business. They reckon that it's about 10,000 hours to become a master at something. And the thing is that your 10,000 hours are going towards something. No matter what, they're being investment. So if you view that and you understand that concept, that literally it takes 10,000 hours to become a master, what are you developing in your skills that is becoming close to that 10,000 hours? If you work a job that you don't like, your 10,000 hours is accumulating. You're going to become an expert, a master, if you're at McDonald's, at flipping burgers, at making burgers. Now that's fine if it's not, as long as it's what you want to do. If it's not what you want to do, then you probably need to look towards investing your time in different places. And it's understanding that, it's viewing yourself, self-evaluation. And once you understand that you have these poor habits that are developing these things, that are bringing you towards investing into a mastery of something that you either do or don't want, then you need to look towards instilling the correct habits. Because the thing about success, if you view any success book, talk about any success principles, they all stem with your daily habits. And the truth is, your daily habits will always determine your future. Whatever you do on a daily basis is going to eventually have an outcome that reflects it. For example, if you invest a lot of time into your relationship, you're going to have a successful relationship. You invest a lot of time into your business, you're going to eventually have a successful business. If you invest a lot of time into sport, you're eventually going to become great at that sport. And that's the truth. And so what is it? You need to take a step back and realize, where your time going? What are the habits that you're developing? What are the changes that you can make? But it's fine, you have hope. No matter what, as long as you recognize things by watching videos like these and instilling the correct habits in elsewhere, you will become successful. So I'm excited to see the type of person you are on the other side. So let's start tomorrow or even today by doing the correct things. Identify the poor habits that you have. Look towards making changes towards them and utilize the discipline that you have created and towards getting you closer and putting yourself in a better position for success. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. I'll see you guys in the next one for Quick Notes with Chrisan. See ya.